thank you so much. I got um, Governor Michael John Sullivan. What a great name, a great Irish name. You were governor of Wyoming from 1987 to 1995. And then
That's correct.
you were also our ambassador, the United States ambassador to Ireland.
Yes.
So do you want to just tell me just a brief, your career seems so
Well,
wonderful.
I'm really a lawyer in my professional career and went through a midlife crisis and got into politics.
Well, then I guess that
And,
we're lucky then.
and then went back to practicing law and then had the very good fortune and privilege of being appointed ambassador to Ireland and did that for 2.5 years and then went back to practicing law.
Tell me how Wyoming politics has it changed through the years? I mean, you were a beloved Democratic governor, but it seems, is Wyoming now, like they like to say, red? Is it overwhelmingly Republican on in state and national government representation?
It is and has been for some time, largely Republican, but we've had in the last 20 or 30 years, 3 Democratic governors. So it has had some balance in the past 30 years on statewide, but we haven't elected anyone to go to Washington since Lyndon Johnson was president. But and politics, to answer your first question, politics has changed. It's in Wyoming, it's changed like a lot of other places. It's more Republican. Where I think we're probably the most Republican state in the country, and politics generally has gotten to be a coarser sort of series of events. It's not. I look back on my term as governor, and I had a Republican legislature and Republican other state officials who were Republican, but we got through. We understood that we were there all there for the benefit of everyone in Wyoming, and I think it was a much more civilized sort of operation than much of what we see these days.
So Wyoming kind of became this story nationally and I guess worldwide with Liz Cheney joining and being an outspoken member of the January 6th committee and being very outspoken against former President Donald Trump. So can you tell me how that has gone over in your state? I know that you have been a Democrat your whole life, but you kind of crossed over here. So tell us about that.
Well, I crossed over for the first time in my political career in order to be able to participate in the primary election, which was held a week ago last Tuesday. And the results of that are well known. I suspect most of your listeners. Liz Cheney was overwhelmingly defeated, which ultimately didn't come as a surprise, but it was a large percentage loss, and it was a result of the Republican Party, which is divided in Wyoming. The party itself has some intra-party skirmishes and is quite divided, and the non-Cheney supporters became quite angry at the fact that Liz not only voted to impeach the president, but agreed to serve on the January 6th committee. And they were out to punish her, and they did, in the sense that she was not reelected, but she made it clear from the beginning she was there because of her deep-seated concern for the country and the Constitution and the nature of the conduct of former President Trump, and that was the reason for her impeachment vote. That was the reason she went on the January 6th committee, and I crossed over to support her because I believed in the fact that she was exhibiting character and courage and integrity that hadn't been exhibited and is missing in a lot of our politics in the last many years, and certainly in the last 6 years, and certainly wasn't exhibited on January 6th by what took place in Washington. And that there are some things, in my view, are more important than politics, and political courage is one of those, and that's why I supported her.
Now, you're a lifelong Democrat, but I understand that you put a Cheney sign on your lawn.
I did.
How was that? How did that go over in the neighborhood?
That's how I outed myself. Well, in my neighborhood, it was quite acceptable. There were Cheney signs on many of the lawns, although there were her opponent signs up and down the street as well. So, but the crossover voting became a bit of a controversy, and for a number of Democrats did cross over, large number, but there aren't enough of us in the state to have made a difference.
And there was also some thought prior to the election that people didn't want to say that they were going to vote for her, but that they would. But that apparently did not happen either.
Well, there may have been some, but not enough to to alter the overwhelming victory that Harriet Hageman, her opponent, took.
What's your thought about the election deniers and the overwhelming support in many states, not just Wyoming, but in this country, for the former president after January 6th?
I have a lot of thoughts about it. It's almost a cult-like situation, and I'm a lawyer. I think the bedrock of our country, foundation of our Constitution, is the rule of law. And the election deniers don't accept the rule of law. However many lawsuits were filed to challenge the election, and none were successful. It's pretty clear that there wasn't anything that was going to change the election. There wasn't fraud or conspiracy or anything that would alter that election. Yet they're unwilling to accept it. And if we can't do that, then we can't have a democracy. We can't accept the basic fundamental requirements of the rule of law. That's what forms the foundation.
I know you mentioned, please continue.
No, and all I was going to say is, including Liz Cheney's opponent, who said that the election was rigged, and she's a lawyer. She ought to know better.
How concerned are you that we head into, we have a general election in November, but how concerned are you that the deniers are winning many seats and might might be a majority in the Congress in the coming year?
Well, I'm concerned. I'm concerned about that. If they continue to exert the kind of influence in politics that is now being exerted, that is denying elections, being critical of and demeaning of everything and everybody who is expressing the opposite opinion. That's one of the concerns, it seems to me. We have to get to a point where we can agree to disagree and understand that politics is based on compromise, and it's not a four-letter word. But I'm worried. I'm worried that President Trump has ignited a belief in conspiracies and other things that are just outrageous, and that we can't do that. Fortunately, they're not winning all the seats. And, I don't know how much it takes. We're now into talking about the FBI being involved in a conspiracy to raid his home and that sort of thing. And the country and the democracy, it doesn't seem to me, can remain very healthy if people believe in those things.
Right. I am. Do we have hope here? I mean, I'm asking you to give me some hope, Governor.
Well,
because I worry about this so much, and it doesn't seem as if everybody. I mean, I live in California, and my daughter and others, just kind of, oh, Mom, it's going to be fine.
I'm not ready to say it's going to be fine, because I am concerned, but I think there is hope. The January 6th committee has done a good job of laying the facts out. I don't know what it takes to convince people that this did happen and that it was a crime and a huge blow to potentially to our democracy. But it does, at some point, we have to reach a point where even the deniers and even the Fox News sort of approach to things can't be believed. That we just have to appreciate that this is just not reality. And another hope, I believe Liz Cheney set a gold standard in integrity, and she was willing to state her opinion and lose her job for her principles. Mm-hmm. And as I heard, I think John Kasich or somebody say on television, if we don't have politicians who are willing to put their job on the line in order to protect our democracy, then our democracy is in trouble. And Liz, I think, will be proven, her legacy will be reflected historically as someone who was truly a profile in courage, and will hopefully sooner than later be proven to be totally correct. And I think she already has, but will be understood by large numbers of voters and constituents to have been right in her commitment.
Since you're an attorney, and you mentioned the serving of a search warrant at Mar-a-Lago, which is President Trump's part-time. It's a golf club, but also serves as part-time resident. Since you come from a time when compromise was acceptable, or there was actual compromise in government, which we haven't seen much of lately, what is your thought on the attacks on the threats? Is what I'm trying to say. The threats that people have made now against the IRS, that they've made against the FBI, and having to step up security. Just as an attorney and former governor, I mean, what's your thought about this threat of violence constantly? We're not even allowed to speak without.
It's the part of the course of politics, and the incendiary nature of President Trump's attacks himself that served to encourage violence and encourage anger and hatred. And, you know, that's not limited to President Trump. When during the impeachment trials, his defenders were talking about this is just hatred. This is based upon hatred. Well, it wasn't based upon hatred. It was based upon people's sincere concerns about his conduct and democracy. And when we get to the point where the excuse for taking a position is because there's hatred, then that's a slippery slope, and we're going down the slippery slope as he lights the fire over the FBI raid. Then the answer is, okay, we're back to violence. Violence may be the only way, and this is an attack. It's not an exercise of the law or legal matters. It's an attack, and that's just wrong, and it's a dangerous path to be on, I think.
Governor, I appreciate so much you taking the time to talk to me and just share your insight and your knowledge of all of this.
Well, Gloria, thank you for your concern. I appreciate your interest in my view for whatever it's worth, and I continue to believe that we have thoughtful and intelligent people throughout this country, and that ultimately that will prove to be the strength of this country, as it has always been the case.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Very nice to
Mike
meet
Sullivan. Thank you. And Ambassador.
Thank you.
I'm still in disbelief that it was that bad. And but it's clear that there were a couple of polls that said beforehand this is going to be bad, that had her back by more than 30 points. That was the University of Wyoming poll, and there was another poll that was done a week or two earlier that had her 22 points behind. And I was like, I can't believe this. But 113,025 votes to 49,316, 68% to 28%. And then a few other candidates split up the rest. And so I don't know. At the end, she didn't do much campaigning that we could see, but she did it in small gatherings. And the belief is that there were some security issues and that there were threats. Mm-hmm. So, you know, I'm not sure there's any way she could have made up that kind of margin.
Yeah. It's a pretty sad state of affairs when a candidate can't campaign because of possible death threats. So, I mean, that was never confirmed, I don't think, but that was discussed as, you know, as not a rumor, but, you know, there was wondering why isn't Liz Cheney campaigning?
Yeah. And I wondered a couple of things. They waited till sort of almost the end, the last 2 or 3 weeks, to throw on her dad, Dick Cheney, who's very popular here, who basically called Trump a coward in the commercial. It got nastier as it went on. But the big billboard said, "Ditch Liz." That's what you were hit with. She gave up early in the evening too. It was around 8:30 in the evening, and had a concession speech, and we're all looking at each other like, "You're kidding, right?" She won 2 counties, one with that has Jackson, and the other one had Laramie, which is where the University of Wyoming is. Probably pretty predictable, but she didn't win any other county beyond that. I don't know what it all says, other than people here were angry that the election didn't go Trump's way. They supported him the most of any state in the country. This is the reddest state there is, and to them, he should still be president, and voter and election integrity is still a thing. Although we never had any problems with election fraud here in any recent times. And to tell you what, in the most recent race, they only had a couple of poll watchers throughout the state. So people weren't running to the election officials to make sure every I was dotted and every T. You know, they basically they know that there hasn't been much in the way of any irregularities in Wyoming elections.
Well, because it's going their way. I mean, if you're going to be really cynical about it, why, complain about election fraud when, they're overwhelmingly Republican and overwhelmingly Trump?
Listen, Trump came to Wyoming personally, and he came to Casper. It had quite a diverse crowd in the sense that some of the people were from Colorado. The license plates were from all over. But, I mean, it was personal for Trump because Liz Cheney, who sat on that January 6th committee and was quite vocal and quite measured about the way she took things on. And here, of course, they saw that as an affront, like you turned your back on the voters. That's not the way we think. But she did what she thought in her own conscience was right, and she paid a price for it. I think she knew there was going to be a backlash. Did she think there was going to be 68-28? I don't think so. But back to the commercial with Cheney, I mean, why did we wait until the last 2 or 3 weeks to actually throw that on there? She stayed in Washington for a good bit of this because the hearings were going on during all of this. And of course, the more she was in Washington, the more people were upset because to them, she should have been back here. Understand, she won her primary 2 years ago by 73%. And she said, had she wanted to continue what she said was the big lie, she could have won again by 73%. Nobody seemed to have a problem with her then. And she voted most of the time with Trump, like 92% of the time she voted with him. So,
yeah. It's not, she didn't, with the ads and things. I mean, do you think she just
had a lot of money? She had a lot of money
because she still has that money, and she's vows that she's going to use that money. She vows she's going to use that money to defeat election deniers and and actually other Republicans.
Well, her mission, according to her, is to keep Trump away from ever becoming president again. And I don't think we've heard the last of this either. It's not the venue and not the time to take on Trump, but you may see it in the primaries for the next presidential election, especially if he runs. What happens when, if Republicans turn on him on a debate stage? It could be rather ripe. We don't know whether Pence is going to run for office or not. But, Liz Cheney, the knock on her from both sides has been she kind of grew up in the Washington area, Virginia. And you'd hear people say, well, she's not from here, or she's a rhino. But that's the other thing that gets thrown around a lot is Republican in name only. And they mean it, and they're only too happy to label you such if they don't feel like you're going along with what is considered the mainstream. You tell me what is considered the mainstream of Republicans today, but right now it would appear to be Trump.